Good morning. It's Wednesday, December the 12th, and this is The Drill. Thank you very much. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States of America today, because I'm the only one that makes the presumption for the status quo. Speaking to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers. So here we go again in California. And as a result of the last election, we are even more socialist today than we were, or will be more socialist whenever the more socialist representation. Orange County got swept, and all the Republicans got swept in Orange County, and so and now the state legislature is like 75% Democrat. So it's up from what it used to be. So now I heard on the radio the other day that there is a movement afoot in the state of California to legalize the recreational use of magic mushrooms. So it's going to go the same way that marijuana went. The left always uses the same psychological tactics and techniques. The first or bedrock of all of their tactics and techniques is prove a negative. So with marijuana, it was, why not marijuana? With abortion, it's why not abortion? And the idea is to try to get conservatives to defend themselves and to, again, prove a negative, prove why something shouldn't happen. And that's what's going to happen here, is they're going to say, well, hey, why not? If marijuana, then magic mushrooms. It doesn't follow. It's a non sequitur, but that's going to be their, that's the way they're going to play it. The thing for conservatives to do when you have your friends, your relatives, or whatever, if you're living in California and they say, hey, what about this magic mushroom thing? You got to ask them. I don't know. What about it? Stand your ground. Do not be baited into trying to prove a negative. You'll hear probably plenty of people on the radio, the Rush Limbaughs and Sean Hannitys et al., trying to prove a negative, trying to convince people why this shouldn't happen. We don't need to do that because the presumption is made for the status quo. What is the status quo? That magic mushrooms are illegal. You're not allowed to possess them or use them. Okay, so the burden of proof, therefore, if you want to change the law, is on the left. The left has to prove to each and every one of us why it is that magic mushrooms should be legal. And there is no obvious reason. There's no obvious case for change for magic mushrooms. It's a weaker argument than marijuana. Marijuana at least had a somewhat medicinal argument, although, but anyways, not completely, but they could at least make some sort of a medicinal claim, because that you can, when you're going through chemotherapy for cancer, there's a wasting process because you're nauseated all the time, so you don't eat, so you waste away. Well, the idea is if you smoke marijuana, then you're going to get what is called the munchies. You start to, it gives you an appetite, and so you won't go through that wasting process, or at least it's not as badly as if you didn't have it. So there's, again, a medicinal component to it that makes it a little bit more of a compelling argument. There was still really no obvious reason to change and switch over to the recreational use of marijuana, other than there are certain people in the state that want to get high. They want to smoke dope. They want to get high. And so they were able to bamboozle the rest of the state. They were able to stymie everybody else by demanding that everyone else prove a negative, prove why it shouldn't happen, and they succeeded. And that same thing is going to happen with, again, magic mushrooms. They're going to say, why not? But, like I said, it's going to be a little bit of a steeper climb for them to get this done, if because they can't use medicine, and they can't claim it, that it is a medicine. Now, they may try to make religious claims, because there are apparently indigenous peoples that use mushrooms, peyote buttons, and etc. as for rituals, for various religious rituals. So they might make that kind of an argument. But basically what they're going to do is challenge the right, the conservatives, to prove a negative. Your friends, your relatives that want to be hip and cool, they may not use psilocybin, but they may decide that they want to be on the right side of history, so to speak, or they're going to do it because their friends support it. It's going to be, like I said, it's going to become a movement. They're going to look for them to get various celebrities behind it. That's one of the ways they get a movement started, is to get certain musicians and actors and other artists to come out in favor of and in support of the recreational use of magic mushrooms. And again, then dare the right to prove why it shouldn't happen. And you're on the right, and you have somebody that comes up to you, your friend, relative, whatever, and that is, again, why I don't understand why. This is usually the way they do it, like with marijuana. I don't understand why marijuana is illegal. See, it's a very clever way of getting you to try to prove a negative, why marijuana shouldn't be legalized. And the same thing they're going to do with magic mushrooms. Well, I don't understand why magic mushrooms are illegal. I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. Sure it does. It's illegal because it's illegal. Anything else? Stand your ground. Or another way to do it is to ask a question, is to say to your friend or relative that says, I don't understand why it's illegal, and you can say, what part of this are you having a trouble with? And let them explain themselves. The point is, they have to explain. Why should it be legalized? You can also feel free to come out and say, so you support legalizing magic mushrooms. What are they going to say? They have to say yes. So once they do that, then you can ask them why. Why should it be legalized? Another way to do it, that's a slight variation, is when they come to you and say, I don't understand why magic mushrooms are illegal. You can say, so you want me to vote to legalize magic mushrooms, is that right? And then when they say yes, okay, why should I do that? Because again, I'm open-minded, and all conservatives, true conservatives, are open-minded, in that we can be convinced, we can be persuaded, but we will not be bullied and intimidated, nor will we be manipulated, psychologically manipulated. That's the thing. I'm not afraid of having somebody convince me I'm wrong and show me that they're right. I want to learn. I want to know. What I am afraid of is being manipulated or bullied and intimidated into making a bad or wrong decision. So when I come back, let's see, last time, it was on Monday, I'd read from the 13 Tactics for Realistic Radicals, which was excerpted from Saul Alinsky's book, Rules for Radicals. And I was going to read, Rules for Radicals Defeated. And I forgot about it and didn't read it. So that's one of the things I'm going to read today. First, though, it's going to be the Ayn Rand lexicon, and then Rules for Radicals Defeated when we come back. And thank you very much. Welcome back. Dark Ages, that's the concept of the day from the Ayn Rand lexicon. The infamous times you call the Dark Ages were an era of intelligence on strike, when men of ability went underground and lived undiscovered, studying in secret, and died, destroying the works of their mind, when only a few of the bravest martyrs remained to keep the human race alive. Every period ruled by mystics was an era of stagnation and want, when most men were on strike against existence, working for less than their barest survival, leaving nothing but scraps for their rulers to loot refusing to think, to venture, to produce, when the ultimate collector of their profits and the final authority on truth and error was the whim of some gilded degenerate sanctioned as a superior to reason by divine right and by grace of a club. In the history of Western civilization, the period known as the Dark Ages after the fall of the Roman Empire was a period when Western Europe existed without any social organization beyond chance local groupings clustered around small villages, large castles, and remnants of various traditions. Swept periodically by massive barbarian invasions, warring robber bands, and sundry local looters. It was as close to a state of pure anarchy as men could come. So, and after the Dark Ages was the Renaissance, a rebirth of the intellectual. But this is, again, helps to draw a distinction between right and left, between conservatives and liberals/socialists. The socialists, the liberals are the Dark Ages people, the people that want to rule by force. It is conservatives, so there are Renaissance types that want to not rule at all, but have representation, and have that representation based on realism. And when I come back, it's going to be Rules for Radicals Defeated. Thank you very much, and welcome back. Rules for Radicals Defeated. Let's see here. I thought... Okay, here it is. Why the Alinsky-Obama connection matters. Because when we left this, he was talking about Saul Alinsky, and then he was talking about drawing the connection between former President Barack Obama and Saul Alinsky, and now why it matters. Many of the goals of the far left and even of Alinsky are laudable. No one on the right is immune to the plight of the downtrodden in society. And I'm going to interject here and say he's wrong. That's not their goal. Their goal isn't to help the downtrodden. They have no short-term goals. The left is interested in socialist paradise, period. End of sentence. Back to the book. No one on the right is immune to the plight of the downtrodden in society. We all agree that we should be making every effort to make society better for everyone and not a select group. The problems tend to arise when we discuss the best ways to accomplish these noble ambitions. While the left believes that government should take care of people, the right believes that the government should empower people to take care of themselves. Within these two different schools of thought, there is room for honest intellectual discussion over the best approach. But beyond these schools of thought is a more radical view. Not all of our goals are the same. Some seek to overturn American society to build a new, more equitable nation on its ashes. That view is the one promoted by Alinsky. In comparing his proposed revolution to that of the American Revolution, Alinsky says, quote, "The revolution was effected before the war commenced," John Adams wrote. Quote, "The revolution was in the hearts and minds of the people. This radical change in the principles, opinions, sentiments, and affections of the people were the real American Revolution," unquote. A revolution without a prior reformation would collapse or become a totalitarian tyranny. Quote, reformation means the masses of our people have reached the point of disillusionment with the past ways and values. They don't know what will work, but they do know that the prevailing system is self-defeating, frustrating, and hopeless. They won't act for change, but won't strongly oppose those who do. The time is then ripe for revolution, unquote. Alinsky has called for a revolution as stark and as real as the American Revolution. He is saying that society has reached a tipping point where a group of trained radicals can lead a new revolution, and those who won't help at least will not oppose. And again, now he's making a distinction between what he calls the left in general, who he says are interested in the downtrodden, and Saul Alinsky, whom he really paints as a socialist/communist. Now, what he's really doing is confusing Democrats, the Democrat Party, and Democrats with socialists. Again, the socialists are the ones, the Alinskys, and everybody associated with Alinsky are people that want a socialist paradise. True Democrats are the ones that are interested in the downtrodden and trying to and make sure that everybody gets a chance to vote, that our society is as democratic as possible. So, back to the book. The entire chapter entitled, quote, "The Purpose," unquote, is essentially a treatise for the tenets of Marxism and the need for a revolution against the power establishment. While Alinsky is careful never to self-identify for fear of losing the support of opposing groups, his ideas and even his language is clearly Marxist. It is clear that Alinsky endorses Marxism. You know, the same kind of Marxism taught by those professors that Barack Obama sought out. While the book is replete with Marxist phrases and ideas, let me offer just one quote to show the flavor of Alinsky's Marxist ideology. Quote, "The setting for the drama of change is never varied. Mankind has been and is divided into three parts: the haves, the have-nots, and the have-a-little-want-mores. On top are the haves with power, money, food, security, and luxury. They suffocate in their surpasses, while the have-nots starve. Numerically, the haves have always been the fewest. The haves want to keep things as they are and are opposed to change. Thermopolitically, they are cold and determined to freeze the status quo." So what he's saying here is basically wrong. It's, again, a malevolent universe premise that Alinsky has. He says that they're the fewest. No, they're not, because it depends on whether how you're measuring that determines whether or not people are haves or have-nots. If you look at American society, and perhaps societies, well, no, I can't say around the globe. We'll stick with American society and look at the lowliest, among us, the homeless. How many of those homeless people look like they're starving to death? Almost none. I've seen a few people that look like they're, I remember one in Pasadena in particular that was emaciated, and he would eventually, every once in a while, he would disappear. And then you would see him again about three to 6 months later, and he would be, I remember seeing him specifically at Target. He was sitting on a bench outside Target, and he had a hospital bracelet on. And he was about, at least 40 or 50 pounds heavier than he used to be. And within 6 months, all that weight was gone, and he was back to being skinny. The only thing I ever saw him consume was he would go to Winchell's, and he would get a cup of hot water, and then he would use their creamer. They had free creamer, and so he would pour creamer into the hot water, and that's all I ever see him consume. I never saw him eat anything. So, and he almost never panhandled. He's pushing a cart, and I assume that he got things by food or whatever he needed by selling recycling. That's what I assume, but I never saw him panhandle. But the point is that he was the only guy that I had ever seen that was skinny. The vast majority of people that you're seeing on the street look like they're well fed, and a certain percentage of them are just flat out overweight or obese. So, and they have their own property very often. I remember another time where there was a guy that was homeless who used to panhandle, and I'm at the Bank of America, and I'm standing in line, and I hear a voice next to me in the next line. The person I'm actually at the window, and the other guy's at the window too, and I thought the voice sounded familiar. I look over, and it's this homeless guy. And I thought, what's he doing at the bank? And then I hear the teller ask him, "Okay, do you want that out of checking or savings?" And I thought, what? That was an eye-opener right there. Where else but the United States of America do the homeless have, or at least maybe Western societies, do the homeless have bank accounts? And there was another homeless lady that I'd heard of. I hadn't seen it myself, but I was told by other homeless folks that she had quite a large amount of money saved. She'd go out and panhandle every day, and she had a huge roll that she kept in her bra or on her person somewhere, and that they had seen it when she goes to the grocery store to buy various things. So she had saved up quite a bit of money. So the idea of have-nots depends on how haves and have-nots depends on how you're measuring things. From a benevolent universe standpoint, she's a have. The guy that is the other homeless guy that has a bank account is a have. He doesn't have as much as I do. Okay, but then again, I don't have as much as the next guy does, and they don't have as much as Bill Gates, and who doesn't have as much as the guy that's running Amazon. Okay, so it's a have world. Some of us have less than others, and so I think probably his best description is where he calls, let's see, where is it here? Let me see. Fine. Making it really happen, blah, blah, blah. That's not it. No. Wait a minute. Past ways and values, affections. Nope, that's not it. Goals are the same within these two different schools of thought. Government, nope, that's not it. Come on, where is it? Over Revolution Stark, chapter entitled The Purpose. There it is. Divided into three parts, the haves, the have-nots, and the have-a-little want-mores. Basically, that's everybody. The last category is where everybody fits in, or the vast majority. We have a little, but we want more. Even the people that have more want more. You know, there's this, and then the myth that there are some people that are completely comfortable. They don't worry about anything. They just the idle rich. The myth of the idle rich doesn't exist. The people that are rich for a reason, and they're rich because they work all the time. They work around the clock. But, so anyways, back to the book. While no one is claiming that American society is perfect, the ultimate war that rages below the surface of the Obama-Alinsky model and traditional American thought is the war between collectivism and individualism. It is a war between the Alinsky Marx view, where America and its capitalistic society play the part of villain, and more traditional American belief system founded on the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. And I'd interject here that actually the war that is actually going on is even deeper than collectivism and individualism. It is although I give him credit for seeing that and not saying it's just between Democrats and Republicans. It's a political. He's getting into the idea that there is a cultural component to this. But even deeper than that is between realists and idealists. Back to the book. A belief system where America is the protagonist defending a system of bottom-up governance against attempts by Alinsky and others to create a top-down system of governments. Perhaps this tendency towards some sort of socialist or quasi-Marxist view was natural in the light of the complete meltdown of the financial sector in 2008. Since the time of Karl Marx and his conclusion that capitalism must necessarily end in Marxist revolt and ultimately in the paradise of communism, there has been a rather natural tendency of people to look to Marxism and communism when it appears that capitalism has apparently failed. This explains the rise of Marxism and communism during the Depression, and it helps to define why America would elect Barack Obama after the crash of 2008. And really, it's not quite true. We didn't elect Barack Obama after the crash. We elected him at, and probably just slightly before, the crash of 2008, because the crash was happening right around election time. And I still think that by and large Barack Obama was voted into office simply for historical purposes. Became a movement that everybody wanted to be part of history. They want to be able to say, I voted for the first black American president. And I still think it's just that simple. I'm speculating. I don't have any proof to that end, but there you go. While such a tendency may in some way seem natural, does not make it correct. Capitalism has corrected itself before and will do so again. The real problem is not with free enterprise, but with crony capitalism. Let's be clear, the real argument before us in the politics of the left and right in America today is whether or not we believe that society owes it to individuals to provide a certain minimum lifestyle, or whether individuals are responsible not only for their own lot in life, but also for governing themselves. And interject again, no, it's even deeper than that. It's really fundamentally about reality and fantasy. Like I said, being realistic and being idealistic. Are we going to acknowledge reality? Are we going to be, as I like to say, reality, certainty, morality, and beauty? Are we going to be? Is that what we're going to be about, or are we going to be about determinism, skepticism, materialism, and socialism? Those are the fundamental choices for us. Because if you're going to be subjective about things, you're going to pretend that reality doesn't exist, that's going to determine the whole rest of your life. The way you act, the way you think, the way you vote, who you associate with, and your complete world outlook. So is realism. If you acknowledge reality and you acknowledge that there are universal rights and wrongs, that and you acknowledge that there is beauty and ugliness in the world, then that is also going to shape the way you look at the world. And by the way, the latter one is the correct one. And I say that it's correct and that it is universally so by the evidence of our senses. By the evidence of our senses, we know there is objective reality, and that therefore we can know things with certainty. Therefore, there are universal rights and wrongs, etc., etc. So he's, well, I'll give him partial credit on that one, but again, it's deeper than what he's talking about. The left espouses a Marxist model in which capitalism must be destroyed so that government can provide a level of equality for everyone. Conservatives, meanwhile, believe that capitalism must be fairly regulated so that everyone is afforded not some governmental a priori equality, but instead an equal opportunity. Government should provide a fair playing field, but the players should decide the game. And again, he's wrong here as well. He says Marx is a model in which capitalism must be destroyed so that blah, blah, blah. No. What Marx was doing, Marx was basically a soothsayer. He had a crystal ball. Okay, he said, I see the future. Okay, and this is the way it's going to happen. Everything's going to happen. Capitalism is going to overextend itself for various reasons. And part of it has to do with the idea that you create products, somebody has to buy them, and they have to have the money to buy them. It's called, I think, has to do with the labor theory of value. But the point is that he is making predictions that at some point that you're no longer going to have enough people to be able, because capitalism will expand around the world, looking for more and more consumers and more customers, and eventually they're going to run out of customers, and they're going to have more products than they're going to have dollars or money for people to buy, because the idea is in order to keep your prices up so you can make profits, you have to keep labor costs down. So it means you pay your labor less in order to keep the profits up, but if you pay your labor less, who's going to buy the products you sell? So eventually there's going to be a crisis in which capitalism is going to start falling apart. When it does, that's when the socialist revolution is going to take hold. It will then go ahead and topple communism, and you'll have one world government and socialist paradise, and everybody will be free to trade with each other and without exploitation, et cetera, et cetera. So that is what he was about. It's not about, hi, I'm a Marxist, so therefore I'm going to, I must go out and destroy something. The whole idea with Marxism is the idea of inevitability. You will hear the left talk about that. It's that their goals, their wants and aims are inevitable. It's going to happen. That they are on the, quote, right side of history, unquote, which is a nod to Hegel. George Hegel was a German philosopher that came up with historical dialecticism, the clash of historical forces. And Marx turned it into material dialecticism, which is the clash of classes in the search for power. So, but the point is that it is not that the Marxists get up in the morning and say, I'm going to go find something to destroy. Their attitude is, I'm on the right side of history. Everything is going to go my way. It may not go there today, but it will get there eventually. And that Marxists whenever they get the opportunity, if they can hasten the eventual revolution, if they can make it happen faster, then they're going to go ahead and do that. So he's not quite right on that one. The choice we face here is both a political one and a moral one. We must decide whether we choose to put our lot with the framers who declared, quote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creators with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness," unquote. Alternatively, we would rather place our trust in the likes of Marx, Engels, and Alinsky, who believed that it was the responsibility of society to make certain that all men share equally in the fruits of labor, even if they do not participate in labor itself. Do we trust these great freedoms to the people, or do we deem the people to have acted unfairly in allowing some to have less than others, and so seek to right that wrong with the all-powerful hand of the government? And it's really not going to be about the all-powerful hand of the government. Again, those might be goals for Democrats. The Democrat, as in the Democrat Party, may want those kinds of goals. They want a heavy top-down kind of a situation. But Marxists and Alinskyists are not interested in that. They're interested in a much bigger picture. They're interested in the whole globe. They want it. And again, what they're looking to do is just simply, I was going to say reify, but it's not quite the word, realize the prediction of Marx. That's the best way to put it. That's what the Marxists and the Alinskys are looking for, is to realize the prediction of Karl Marx. You will have to decide which America you hold to be true, which America we shall aspire to be, whether it be, as Ronald Reagan said in his farewell address to the nation, quote, "I've spoken of the shining city all my political life. In my mind, it was a tall, proud city built on rocks, stronger than oceans, windswept, God-blessed, and teeming with people of all kinds, living in harmony and peace. A city with free ports that hummed with commerce and creativity. And if there had to be city walls, the walls had doors, and the doors were open to anyone with the will and the heart to get there. That's how I saw it and see it still," unquote. Or whether you would side with President Obama when he said in an answer to whether he believed in American exceptionalism or not, quote, "I believe in American exceptionalism just as I suspect that the Brits believe in British exceptionalism and the Greeks believe in Greek exceptionalism," unquote. There's a wide gap between those disparate visions of America, and as you read this book, I ask you to search the innermost recesses of your mind and soul to find in which America you believe, and to find within yourself what you believe should be the noblest aspirations of the American people. It is often methodology more than substance that separates the Alinsky model from the vision conservatives have for America. Often their goals start out the same, but the willingness of Alinskyites to create the envisioned change, quote, "at all cost," unquote, or, quote, "by any means necessary," unquote, causes an inevitable separation between the Alinskyite and the conservative. The Constitution limits the methodology of the conservative, but to the, quote, "enlightened liberal," unquote, change for their preconceived idea of better is the ultimate guide. And if the Constitution stands in the way, then it is the Constitution that should change and not their minds. And that last part touches a little bit on the narcissistic quality that the left engenders in its followers, telling its followers, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you as an individual. You're a pervert? You like to diddle children? There's nothing wrong with you. It's society. Our society sexualizes children, and it does so for profits. See, and that's capitalism. If we would only get rid of capitalism, then we wouldn't have children being sexualized. You wouldn't have the urge to diddle children. That's the kind of thinking that they have there. But basically, he's still confusing, and his book would be much more effective if he would get to an understanding. On the one hand, he starts talking about Marx, and then he starts talking about short-term political and short-term, short-range political goals in the United States of America. And they're not the same things. One is democratic, and the other is Marxist. Okay, so you got to separate those two. The Democrat Party wants top-down government, wants to, make sure that the poor are taken care of. Let's see what it is. He talks about the enlightened liberal, but to the enlightened liberal, change for their preconceived idea of better is the ultimate guide. And again, that's for the Democrats. not for Alinskyeites or socialists. Not all Democrats are socialists, and no socialist is a Democrat. That's all there is to it. There was a guy I believe in Georgia. He was in the House of Representatives, and his name was Zell Miller. And he's the only Democrat I would have ever voted for. To me, he was a true Democrat. He was interested in democratic ideas, democratic ways of looking at and approaching the United States of America. He was patriotic. He loved this country, whereas the socialists think that the whole notion of nation states is outdated, outmoded, and has to go. They're looking for one world government. So let's see. Yeah, I'm going to have to leave it there. But at this particular point, we've come to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. And until next time, thank you very much for listening, and have a great day.